Howdy everyone, and welcome back to the CrappieEngineer YouTube channel. So, Christopher Nolan just released a very serious, very expensive movie about the Odyssey with real actors, real Greek islands, and kind of the whole prestige treatment surrounding it. And I watched it, and I thought it was pretty good, but the entire time I kept thinking about a different adaptation of Homer's exact same story. One that came out about 20 years ago, and it features a talking sponge and was absolutely not trying to win any awards. So here's the claim I want to make today. The SpongeBob movie from 2004 is, in a few specific and very real ways, more faithful to Homer's actual epic poem than Christopher Nolan's version is. So let's go through those. Alright, real quick so we're all on the same page here. The Odyssey is Homer's epic poem about Odysseus trying to get home after the Trojan War, and after roughly 10 years and a bunch of encounters with monsters and constant interference from the gods, Odysseus is barely able to make it back home. And this entire poem is basically built around one word, being nostos, which just means homecoming. And that's kind of the main point of the story. It's just a guy trying to get home. So, Nolan's film is relatively faithful adaptation of the big picture given the Iliad and Homer's stories here. It has a real Greek setting, real weight to the violence involved, and it has a genuinely thoughtful take on guilt and war. Now, at a surface level, the SpongeBob movie doesn't appear to be adapting to the Odyssey on purpose. It's a kids' movie, and it's about SpongeBob going to retrieve a stolen crown. But when you line these two movies up side by side, I would say there are multiple specific spots where the cartoon actually sticks closer to Homer's mark than the serious movie does. With all that being said, let's get into my first point. So, first idea is that Homer's Odyssey isn't one continuous plot. It's really a string of separate weird stops along a very long journey. You've got the Lotus Eaters, the Cyclops encounter, you've got the Wind Gods, and even a witch who turns all the men into pigs. And each stop is basically its own self contained adventure before the story kind of restarts and moves on to the next one. So, Nolan cuts a bunch of these in his adaptation. The stop with the Phaeacians is gone, the Lotus Eaters are gone, and an entire subplot with Aelus and a bag of wind is gone as well. Additionally, Telemachus, Odysseus' son, was supposed to visit a king named Nestor on his own journey, and that whole subplot is kind of cut as well. And look, I understand why you cannot fit every single stop from this ancient epic poem into an hour or two movie and still have correct pacing, and that's a completely reasonable filmmaking choice. But it does mean the movie trades away the actual shape of the original story, um, which is a journey defined by discrete, strange little episodes, for something that feels way more railroaded and streamlined. So now if you go and watch the SpongeBob movie again with this in mind, SpongeBob and Patrick are sent on a quest to retrieve King Neptune's crown from Shell City, and the movie is structurally just stop after stop. You've got the evil ice cream stand, the impassable trench, and these two even get tempted at a biker bar, and they've got a relentless hitman named Dennis chasing them the entire time, showing up again and again. He's kind of this recurring obstacle in the film, and it is beat for beat a series of bizarre episodic encounters on the way to their final destination. So this is actually the real shape of the Odyssey. Homer didn't write a tight three-act structure. He wrote a long road trip with monsters at every stop, and SpongeBob movie is way closer to this mark than the serious adaptation. Alright, so my second point is that in Homer's version, the gods are very real, they're very active, and they are constantly meddling in the characters' lives. Athena, in particular, is directly involved almost the entire time, and she shows up often disguising herself and physically intervening to help Odysseus and his family. She's not really a metaphor, she's a character in this world that is impacting real things. Now, in Nolan's film, Athena gets kind of reworked into something much more ambiguous, and she's framed as a kind of projection tied to Odysseus' guilt. She appears to be something only he can perceive, and the film even opens with a line hedging on whether the supernatural elements in the story are literally real or if they're all just in Odysseus' head. and it's a genuinely interesting choice for a modern, psychologically grounded film, but it does mean that the actual literal divine intervention that defines the poem gets swapped out for more ambiguity. So, the SpongeBob movie does not do this at all, and at the exact moment that SpongeBob and Patrick are about to fail completely, David Hasselhoff, playing himself, he's supposed to be a literal godlike figure of pure confidence and swimming ability, and he physically appears and rescues them, and he propels them home through the raw power of speaking in the third person. So, there's zero ambiguity here, and it is not a metaphor for anything. It's supposed to be just him as a god or deus ex machina showing up to figure the problem out directly for them, which is exactly the job Athena does constantly throughout the actual poem. So, once again, the less serious SpongeBob movie kept the literal external divine intervention that Homer wrote in, and the more serious adaptation turned it into a psychological question mark. Alright, now here's kind of my bigger point, which is the ending of this epic poem. So, I mentioned earlier that the entire poem is built around one word, being nostos, or homecoming. Odysseus spends roughly 10 years and the entire length of the poem trying to get home, and finally he succeeds. He makes it back to Ithaca and reclaims his household, and the poem ends with him living out his life there. He's at home with Penelope. Now, Nolan's film completely changes this, and without spoiling every detail of the film, the ending has Odysseus so weighed down by his guilt over the violence of his return that he and Penelope choose to sail away permanently instead. They don't get to stay home, and their son takes over their kingdom, and the two of them end up leaving for good. Now, this is a genuinely bold and thoughtful choice for a film about the cost of war and violence, but it does mean that the movie's ending directly contradicts the one word that the entire poem is kind of named after, the Odyssey, but without the homecoming part. Now, on the other hand, the SpongeBob movie ends with an actual homecoming. They get the crown back, and King Neptune's dignity is restored. SpongeBob gets his raise, and everything is put back in its rightful place. That is Nostos, and that is the actual ending Homer wrote, played out completely straight in a movie about a triumphant sponge. So, if you're grading these two films on which film delivers the emotional and structural payoff the word Odyssey literally promises, it's not the prestige picture with the $200 million budget. It's the more fun and lighthearted film about two dudes overcoming a world of evil. Alright, so look, I'm not saying that Nolan made a bad movie or even a completely unfaithful one because he didn't. It's a thoughtful and genuinely well-made film, and taking all of these liberties is a completely legitimate choice for adapting a 3,000-year-old poem into something that genuinely works out as a modern film. And this isn't really a knock on him at all. But what I actually think this proves is something a little bigger than just a fun comparison. Faithfulness to a story isn't really about the tone, and it's not about how serious the adaptation looks, or even how big the budget is, especially not how many award-winning actors are part of it. It's about whether the actual bones of the original story survive the entire trip. And the episodic structure, the literal gods, and especially the homecoming part, a kid's movie about a sponge kept all three, and a prestige film with Zendaya, Matt Damon changed all three, albeit on purpose, but this ultimately led this film in a wildly different thematic direction than Homer's original epic poem. And honestly, that tracks with everything else I've made videos about on this channel. The important stuff in life kind of hides in places people don't take seriously enough to actually look at. Nobody expected Squidward to explain a Russian novel either. So the next time someone tells you a kid's movie is beneath serious analysis, now you have a 3,000-year-old epic poem and two competing modern adaptations to prove them wrong. Howdy guys, and thank you for watching another CrappieEngineer production. Let me know in the comments if you've seen both of these films, and if you agree with me, or if you think I'm reaching on a few of these points. Like and subscribe, and I'll talk to all of y'all soon.